Yes. So we're gonna move on to our special guest tonight, Blake Roberto Ward.
Oh, hi, that's me.
That is you. You get your own segment on this show, my dude. So
Wow.
so Blake has very humble origins from the city of Santa Cruz, and he's been writing and making his way through Hollywood, which has been great. Literally banging down all the doors, trying to get things made. He is the hype man in our group essentially. I don't remember what I do anymore, but writing, I guess. I'm more like the writing world building guy. He's more the hype man, get us in the door kind of guy. We actually work out really well this way. Um, so we're gonna ask you a couple of questions about your life and how you got up to the point you're currently at today.
Sure thing.
Cool. So, what are you working on right now? Yeah, what are you working on right now?
Well, gosh, there was a lot of movement going on, and then this COVID thing hit, and Hollywood just kind of just stopped.
Yep.
So right now, I have an original Beach Boys musical. Sam knows it. It's called Sounds of Summer. It's kind of like in the same vein as Mamma Mia. So, but I'm bringing characters to life such as Barbara Ann and Rhonda, and you get to know who they are as people and stuff. Long story short, I have a deal with a theater company actually in Santa Cruz. It's about a 509-seat theater, and I am currently talking to entertainment attorneys to go get the music rights at Universal Music Group and all the other holding companies to then bind the music to the book, so then I can license the book out to Musical Theater International, that then you can then put it on your own stage wherever you are in the world. So that's kind of like the quick version of it, but baby steps.
So,
The last 10 years, and we're starting to see some movement, so it's cool.
so you've been. It sounds like you've been doing this a while. It's a musical. It takes a lot of time and a lot of resources, and it's not exactly like a popular genre for anything. How long did it take you to develop this project, and like how far do you think you've gone, and how far do you think you need to go?
So I actually started writing this for fun. I was a really addicted Halo player. I was really good. Halo 3, you cannot beat me, at all. I was really good. And I kind of put the Xbox aside for a bit, and I was like, all right, I need to fill my time up with not doing this. So I picked up, I was kind of driving home from the beach one day, and in Santa Cruz, and it was my sophomore year. Yeah, freshman going to my sophomore year, that summer. And California Girls popped up on the radio. So this was 2011. And, we've heard the song millions of times, but for some reason it kind of hit me I need to go write this Beach Boys musical. So fast forward to 2014, I used this as my senior thesis at Loyola, and I get a good grade on it, A+, and the professors at the time were like, you need to get this in front of the band. So graduate, and now I'm out in Hollywood. I'm like, how am I going to get in contact with the Beach Boys? So literally nose to the grindstone, beating the pavement. And I'm on Facebook, and it's oh yeah, Mike Love. He's the lead singer on Surfing USA and a couple other, well, actually a lot of songs, if you recognize his voice. But he was at Amoeba Records, right? And he's doing a free show, and they're doing a whole signing thing. And so I go there, meet him, talk to his wife, and the wife personally emails me, and they have the script. So there's one. Then I am working at this restaurant in Marina Del Rey, and I get off work at 3 p.m. and I noticed that Al Jardine, who's their rhythm guitar player from back in the day, he has his own private show up in San Luis Obispo, up in, it's just a 3-hour drive, and the show starts at 8. So I get in my car and I just book it up there, get backstage passes and everything, and I just kind of take a picture with him and start talking to him, getting introduced to his manager. His manager's name is Spud, pretty fun guy. He's really into the whole surfing tiki culture thing, so he's the perfect dude to manage out. and so I've become really good friends with him, and then to the point of just messaging people, from there it's David Marks, who's their lead guitar player. Went to lunch with him twice. You know, they have the musical. And so it's just like, hey guys, look, I got in the door with these people. And then there was this one night, and this is pretty cool how the universe kind of like pushes things together. There's this one night where it was like 2 years ago, this couple sitting at my table, and I'm serving at the restaurant over here in Marina. And they're like, so what do you do? You know, you're not like a server full time. I'm like, well, I got this Beach Boys thing, blah, 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 blah. And they kind of look at each other and they say, well, have you thought about like showing like a premiere for the short film that I've made with Sam was in it, and we went up to Leo Carrillo, shot this whole thing, had all the cars, the OG surfboards, did the whole dance numbers out on the beach right there. It was just, it was like literally like 15-minute teaser trailer for for the musical and stuff that's on my YouTube channel. It's pretty cool. And so they're like, well, we are actually really good friends and at United Recording and East West Studios because we're managers within the music industry. And I'm like, oh, really? They're like, yeah, we represent like Bob Dylan's kids and like a couple others. I'm like, oh, that's cool. So they're like, you want to check out the studios? I was like, yeah, sure. So we set up a time. I go into East West Studios on Sunset Boulevard, and I'm walking into these doors, and they're like, okay, so here's room A. And it's this big old room. And they're like, so what was recorded in here? And it's like, come fly with me, Frank Sinatra. Fly Me to the Moon, Frank Sinatra. Here's the microphone, Frank sang on, and then we're like, okay, that's cool. We're walking down to their famous room, which is room 3. And you walk in, it's this kind of smaller room, but you're like, so this is the room where Brian Wilson created Pet Sounds. So wouldn't it be nice if we were older, like that, and God only knows what those songs are there. I'm like, here's the piano that it was recorded on. So I'm like touching the piano. Mamas and the Papas, California Dreamin', that was recorded in there. Scott McKenzie, If You're Going to San Francisco, that's recorded in there. So it's all these big artists. I'm like, okay, this is cool. So we go from there to United Recording, which is like next door. And we're, it's just like all the history of this place, like American Idiot from Green Day was recorded in there. Michael Jackson was recording Thriller. And we're like walking down the hallway, like, oh yeah, see this bathroom? It's like, yeah. I'm like, oh yeah, that's where Michael Jackson kept his pet monkey when he was recording in the next studio over. He just put the monkey in the bathroom and locked it. And it's like,
poor
let's go do some music.
monkey.
So, yeah, so it's like all these things, and it's like, oh yeah, this is where Barbara Ann was recorded, and the Foo Fighters did Learn to Fly in the same room that Barbara Ann was recorded by the Beach Boys. I'm like, I'm learning all these like little fun things. So we end up setting a date. It's really cool. We got like a bunch of people there from the industry. One of the founding fathers of Gibson guitar showed up. His name's Peter Leinheiser. He's friends with John Stamos and Brian Wilson, all those guys. He showed up. Daria Wilson, Brian's eldest daughter from his current marriage to Melinda Wilson, she showed up, and it was just all positive, feedback and support from everybody all across, the board, which is fantastic. So right before COVID hit, I had a meeting with WME lined up to check out the musical and potentially sign me and a couple other writers to, as a group to get into this thing. And I had interest, we're actually right across the street here at Sony and TriStar to take a look at it too. And then Hollywood shut down, and I'm just like, okay, so this is fun. I had like all this stuff going, and now it's like, oh, okay, yeah. You just have to wait till next year or whenever COVID decides to go away and we reopen back up. And I'm just sitting there. I'm like, okay, well, now what do I do?
The boulevard of broken dreams, man.
Well, yeah, really though. So yeah, kind of coming full circle. It's great to get this letter of intent from this theater company, and actually, they want to put it on next summer, depending on whether or not COVID goes away or not. But it's cool. It's just, if you want to get something done in this town, you have to be relentless, and you just have to go for it. Too many of my friends that have moved down here from Northern California and anywhere around the world have left, and it's just like, you got to, if you really want something in this town, it took Brad Pitt 10 years to make it into the, it's like, it takes people a long time. It's not going to happen overnight unless you're Justin Bieber with Usher.
So let me ask you a question, a final question before we move on. You've been working on this project for going on 7 years, a really long time, just this one project. And you've talked a lot about the successes and a lot about the people that you've met. What are some of the challenges you've met along the way? And other than COVID, what challenges still remain for you?
So the challenges for this are obviously acquiring the star of the show, which is the music rights to the Beach Boys music. So this is where it gets interesting. If you go on BMI's website, and this is where it gives you all the information about the songs, let's take Good Vibrations, for example. I'm picking up good vibration. We all know it, right? Mm-hmm. There are 6 title holders that own the rights to that one song. So in order for this one song to get, attached to the narrative that I wrote, I have to have entertainment attorneys make individual deals with each 6 of those people just for that one song. And if 5 say yay and the 6 says no, I then cannot use that song and I have to rewrite the script. So this is where it's come to this point of I got all the ducks in a row and now it's time to pull the trigger. And so I've been in contact with, this is the big, scary part is all right, reaching out to attorneys and figuring out what are the steps to going out and doing this, the right legal way, right? You can't go just put the show on or else you're going to get sued up the wazoo by, everyone that owns the rights. So it's how do you go about getting the rights? So the challenge for this, are the grand rights. And that's what we're currently acquiring right now. So it's music rights specifically for the Jukebox musical. And I have to, I got it now. I had to raise $5,000. I got most of that from investors. I'm going to raise some on the side through a GoFundMe. But it's that initial $5,000 is for the attorneys to write out letters of engagement that go to every single person that owns every single song, for the entirety of the musical.
Like a bureaucratic nightmare.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And so where it gets, even crazier than that, besides putting the music on the side, is that you have the Beach Boys are one of the most dramatic bands when it comes to just suing each other, just in general. Little story about it.
Careful, Blake. You're being recorded, man.
Yeah,
you don't want that coming back.
It's nothing against any of these guys. The dream is to get all of them in a room and say, look, put all the BS aside and look at this and look how far it's gotten, because it's going to do you guys wonders for your music. The summer I started writing this, I'm at this daycare with these kids ranging from first to 8th grade. And I sit them down. It's Music Appreciation Day, and I'm a singer and stuff. And so they asked me, Blake, can you write? And I was like, sure. And so I sit these kids down. I'm like, okay, who here has heard of the song title California Girls? And all these kids raised their hands. And I'm like, okay, who wrote it? And they all yelled out, I'm kidding you not, they all yelled out, Katy Perry. And so all the adults in the room are looking at each other we're getting old. And all the kids are what are you talking about? And so I played them, this song, and they're oh, we've heard this song before. And they're all dancing in their seats and having fun. The issue comes with the band. The majority of it comes with the issue with the band. And so music rights, I don't have to worry about anything, because Brian Wilson's dad was in a lighter word, an asshole, and went behind Brian and Mike's backs and sold all the Beach Boys music rights to Capitol Records, which is now owned by Universal, back in the day, underneath their noses. And they had no idea about it. And so they are 76, 77 years old, and they have to tour for the rest of their lives to pay for everything. They can't just retire like Bob Dylan, because Bob owns all of his music. And now, McCartney just got his rights to the Beatles music after all these years from Michael Jackson taking it, etc. But Brian wants to, he gets to this point where, he sees the Beatles and how crazy awesome they are doing with this album called Rubber Soul. And Brian has this mental breakdown on a plane one day, and he's as the band's going over to Asia for this Asian tour, and he pretty much tells the band, guys, look, I want to stay home and write music, and I think it would be best if you guys go on without me. And when you come back, I'll have great music for you guys. So Mike and Bruce and all these guys go over to Japan, China, and they're performing over there. Brian comes back to the U.S. and he creates Pet Sounds, right? And even to this day, the Rolling Stones magazine just came out with like the top 500 albums of all time, and Pet Sounds is number 2. It just like came out like a month ago, right? So, the Beach Boys album, it's still, it's crazy how awesome it's doing, for how old it is, right? So this is where the split comes with the band. Mike and the guys come home, and Brian has written Pet Sounds, and Pet Sounds sounds nothing like the traditional Beach Boys music. This surfing USA, and they took out her daddy's car, and she, it's none of this bippity boppity boop happy fun flower stuff, right? It's this deeper side of Brian Wilson that just, it still blows my mind and people's minds when they listen to Pet Sounds all the way through because of how deep it is. And so Mike Love pretty much hears this, and it's kind of like, what the is this to Brian? And Brian says, dude, the Beatles are killing us. Like, we gotta beat them. Like, Brian was a very competitive guy and still is. And Mike's like, no, we got to stick with the surfing stuff. And so that's where this split came. And Brian now tours underneath Brian Wilson with Al Jardine, and Mike tours with Bruce Johnson underneath the Beach Boys. And so Mike does his own show of what he thinks the band should be, and Brian does his own thing about what he thinks it should be. So they're suing each other left and right of just about for anything. And it's super sad because it's like, you think with, especially Mike talking about love, peace, and harmony, and, and you think that would be the thing with the band, is like getting everyone back together. So it's hard, that's the part of it. It's like, I can put this musical on, but getting all of them in a room to be like, can you guys back this? That's the tough part. So it's kind of like that's being put aside to see how well the musical will do on its own when it's in a stage production, and and kind of go from there. Then once it is big enough to a point and they see that, that's when they'll kind of hop on, if that makes sense. But it's just drama central with those guys. So I've been doing this over the last 10 years, hanging out with these guys and everyone. I mean, they're all nice people. It's just like, put the drama aside and let's do something fun for you guys, like that's what I want to do at the end of the day.
Do you guys have any other questions for Blake before we move on?
It's a lot, yeah.
My question.
It's a lot. It's
a tremendous amount of information.
Yeah, there's a lot.
My only question was like, were you? I mean, clearly you were like a big Beach Boys fan. You must have been. You seem to be very passionate. But you say you were just like driving on the beach one day and sort of like realized you need to make this. Like, was this like? That's a strange like epiphany to have as you're driving up the road by a beach and you're just like, fuck, like I need to write a musical about the Beach Boys. Like was this something you had really come to you? Are you more musically inclined, or was it like more the screenwriting element, or like what really made you take that strange left turn?
That if I had a real answer to that, like
there doesn't have to be a real answer. That was the weirdest thing.
Yeah,
the whole.
No, I know. No, to me it is. Even to this day, it's just really weird because, like, again, I was this big video gamer guy, like, just whatever. And I don't know, like, I had never written anything before. I didn't have Final Cut and, Final Draft. I didn't have, all these programs and stuff to do things on. Final Draft, not Final Cut. But, like, I just went home, opened up Microsoft Word, and I downloaded their Top Hits album. And it was weird because, like, all the songs just started rearranging themselves in my head into this narrative. And I just started spitting it out onto the computer. And I can't explain it.
It does happen like that sometimes.
Yeah. So it's crazy. But I mean, to this point with the movie end of it, I was really fortunate to be introduced to Jim Brubaker, and Jim was the ex-president of Universal Studios, and he produced like the Rocky franchise with Sylvester Stallone, Bruce Almighty with Jim Carrey, and the Nutty Professor with like Eddie Murphy, and he's attached to the project, which is super cool. So it's again, it's when Hollywood opens up, we'll see what happens, but. Yeah. It's been a long journey, but I'm still going at it. The goal is to at least see it on stage at least once, and then I'll shut up about it and see where the universe takes it from there. But until then, it's keep going. Just never give up on your dreams. I guess that's the kind of whole thing about it. So that's it.
Well, Blake, thank you for the insights of Hollywood that a lot of people don't get to see very often. Like, it's one thing to say, oh, I made it and here's how I did it, but you really kind of gave a more comprehensive step-by-step on what you've done to get to where you are now. And, it's pretty rare. So thank you for sharing your insights about that and your weird, large, comprehensive amount of Beach Boys history with us.
Yeah.
You learn a lot when you hang out with all of them.
So before we move on, where can we find you in the world?
So let's see. YouTube, just Blake Ward. I'm the first guy that pops up. If you want to watch the Beach Boys short film that Mr. Locke here helped me put together. It's called Sounds of Summer. And there's a little, it's 15 minutes. Pretty fun. I'm also on Instagram at Blake Robert Ward. If you want to check me out there, that's when I kind of do most of my stuff. I do have a Snapchat, but it's like I don't use it a lot, and there's a Twitter that I don't really use it a lot. It's just kind of like Instagram and YouTube are like, yeah, there's some of my things. But,
so what we'll do is we'll put all the links for your YouTube in the comment in the little blurb below, so people can check that out.
Dope. And website is www.blakerobertward.com. There you go.